Okay, guys, so remember that we have two sections that are here within this module. Module number 2, we started out with the mission, and now we're gonna start talking about the community needs assessment. So if we go back to the first page of this module, which was page number 13, okay, so that was the very beginning where we defined what our learning objectives were. If somebody could read those last, 5 bullets. Last 5 bullets.
Participants identify the difference between family, agency, or community need statements. Participants understand that the proper identification of the problem sets the path for the solution. Participants recognize that that identification of resources is an important part of the assessment process. Participants learn the importance of gathering data from multiple sources to assure a comprehensive community assessment. And last but not least, participants are introduced to data analysis and prioritization processes.
Sweet, thank you so much. So we'll move forward to page number 21, which is where the second part of module 2 begins with community assessment. So right now is really our opportunity to make that link between having a mission statement and providing the building blocks for what it is that we're hoping to accomplish with that. So we know that, the link really that needs to be there is that we need to establish what our community needs, okay? We're outcome focused, but we can't get an outcome unless we know what we're trying to work towards. Cool? So as you see on page 21 here, we know, again, why we're in business. That's established with our mission statement. It's that driving force behind what it is that our agency is doing and how we're functioning. And it's also the place that really kind of defines how we're perceived within our community, is based upon our mission statement. Okay? So how do we know what services are appropriate to provide?
Through a needs assessment.
Through a needs assessment.
Ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. We ask questions. Again, we have to be able to identify those needs so that we can really talk about what sort of outcomes we're going to accomplish, okay? And we do this through comprehensive assessments. So a community needs assessment is a pretty involved process. We look at a lot of different data sources in order to do that. We'll talk some about these different data sources, but we're not going to jump a ton into those, okay? So this is the place where we're going to be able to do our community assessment, identify our strategies and services, and then we're going to use kind of a systematic process for analyzing that data so that we can target things appropriately. All right? So if we look here on page number 21, that first bolded section says community assessment is that systematic process of creating a profile of the needs and resources of a given community or a target population. So the first thing we have to think about is, what is a community? I mean, what do you guys think a community is?
Population of people
Okay.
who live in a region.
So it's kind of like a place-based,
So
yeah.
geographically based is what I usually think of when I think of a community, whether it's a buildings community or a town's community or a county community.
Yeah.
That kind of has always been in mind, yeah.
Absolutely. So lots of different communities that we can refer to. There's community of circumstances where it's, a community of people that have maybe been displaced as a result of some sort of catastrophic weather event, a community of geography. And we use the community of geography. That's how Community Action Partnership has identified what our community is that we talk about Lake, Sanders, Lincoln, and Flathead County as our community that we serve. So there are, lots of information on Wikipedia, and so we do have a helpful link within the manual here if you want to learn more about how communities could be defined. But for the purpose of today, we're going to use just that idea of how we define our community within the network where we work, okay? So we have to make sure that we understand too that because we've moved further away from the president's office and really put the focus on the state and local level, it's our opportunity to define what that community is. So we might define it this way, but other networks within or other agencies within the network may define it somewhat differently. Okay? So let's look then on page number 22. If I could get a volunteer to read those first 2 paragraphs, that would be great.
Needs assessment may be thought of as a way to identify the difference between what exists and what should be. Agencies gather information so that decisions can be made regarding priority needs to address and outcomes that can be achieved. The assessment of community needs forms the link between the agency's mission and the outcomes it will achieve with its services.
Awesome. So what we have here underneath that in this bolded section on page number 22 is what kinds of needs do communities face? And so in here we have this list of domains, and this was all part of that CSBG legislation and that reauthorization that took place in 1998. So that gave us that framework from which we were going to be reporting until we got this national theory of change, which was implemented then in 2017. We're actually like 2 days short of the second anniversary of the theory of change. It was January 12th, 2017.
I forgot the cake.
You know, it's something that's really new right now within our network, but it's important to look here and to see what these categories or these domains are. Again, they're there underneath that bolded section, and it helps us define what we have. So we have employment, education, actually, you don't even have to look there. You can look over here. So we have employment, education, cognitive development, income, infrastructure, asset building, housing, health, social or behavioral development, civic engagement, and community involvement. So again, these are reflecting those 3 levels that we have talked about throughout the day that are reinforced on the front page of our manual that we'll continue to build off of. So additionally, there were some new domains that were added when we got this theory of change, because now, like I said, we have that online reporting system, so we do have some additional domains that are included in there, which is great. And it's you know, really the idea here of services supporting multiple domains, so services that help out in a couple different arenas. So for example, with our employment and training program, they provide a great level of case management. So while they may be able to assist with this employment piece, they're also going to be doing an assessment when people come in to determine if they have housing needs, and they may work towards eradicating or addressing some of those housing needs. So we have sometimes where we have one service that really touches down on multiple domains, and that's what we need to be able to capture and report out to the federal government, and that's really what we need to be looking at right now with this annual report, which is cool. So we're lucky in the sense that we're at a time when there's this online opportunity to put in this information so that we can, you know, get a good visual of what our data looks like. So the thing that we have to remember with our needs assessment, okay, so again, we're identifying the needs that exist, is that identifying these domains isn't the same as identifying a need, okay? So employment doesn't mean we've identified a need. What that could be is that our community lacks living wages, you know, so that's a specific need that touches down on the domain of employment. So we just have to make sure that we always articulate things in a language that matches what we're trying to accomplish. So these are our domains. It's not the same as identifying that. So at the bottom of the page here, on page number 22, we can see that so yeah, at the bottom of the page, it's not sufficient just to identify the importance of these broad categories. It doesn't give us a clear identification of the perceived needs. So what we know is that we have these 6 national goals that have been established with community, agency, and family levels there, and when we look about the needs in our community, we have to think of them on those 3 levels, okay? So again, those 3 levels we're going to hear about over and over again. When you look at the theory of change, if you look at the very top there, and you all have a copy of this in your handouts as well, it has 3 goals that are listed, and you'll notice again that there isn't that agency level goal articulated there, and that's because it's been recognized that You know, that the agency capacity is embedded in reference to our local goals. So our agency capacity is something that we address, and it's embedded in so many of the places where we provide the work that we do. So even though it's not reflected and articulated like it was with our historic goals, it's still something that's important that's in there. So, okay, are we feeling good about this? Okay, so I'm gonna ask some questions right now, and we're gonna have a chance to kind of do a little mini needs assessment. I think I might need my scribe at some point, so I might be grabbing you to see if you can help Alicia, but how many of you guys feel like education is something that is important for our community? Or feel that there is a need in our community for education? Okay, yep, so again, we think about needs on those 3 different levels. So let's think about the different level of needs when it falls within that domain of education. Okay? So perhaps, let's see, if we go to page number 23 here, okay, we're gonna walk through this example of identifying what might be a need statement. So perhaps you feel education is an issue in our community because we have a high school dropout rate, you know, that's higher than the state average. Is this an issue that people recognize? Okay, yep, yeah, so we do. So what we're gonna do here, a big shout out to Melissa, who let me borrow her tape dispenser yesterday so that I could use this, and then she called me to say, I'm feeling a little bit uncertain of where my tape is, so, which was great. I returned it, it's back on her desk along with a picture I colored for her. So anyway, up here we see education. What we're gonna do is, since we've articulated that there's a high dropout rate that exceeds what the statewide level is, we're gonna now articulate some need statements that go back to that family, agency, and community levels, okay? So we have education up here. So perhaps we feel that education is a community issue because this high dropout rate, you know, is there. So if that's right, oh, I'm sorry, I messed up. So we could state, see, education is an issue our community is facing because of this high dropout rate. So we've already acknowledged that, yes, this is how we feel as a community. So what we need to do now is talk about what a family, you know, it's actually all spelled out on page number 23 here. So look at page number 23, okay? Let's look at ways that we can articulate this. And the very first one is going to be identifying that family level need, okay? Oh goodness, so this tape doesn't read, Melissa. So,
it's working perfectly.
okay, this is great. Okay, so individuals do not have high school diplomas, okay? So we're talking about individuals, okay? So that's a family level because it references individuals. Cool? We cool with that? Okay? So as you move down the page, we could see that this impact is really, you know, the impact of the high dropout rate on the community is great. And so we could say that our community, as a result of this need of education, this is a result, you know, that touches down in this domain, our community doesn't have youth who are prepared to take productive roles as adults. Cool? So we see how that would be, you know, it's our community, individuals. So this language is going to define it. Okay? And our final one here is going to be one that's agency focused. Our agency has need for additional funding to support GED programs, which GED is a trademark and we probably shouldn't be using it, but it's something that's embedded within the curriculum. So this is agency, okay? So this is an agency level need that's been identified. Okay? So when we look at needs, we have to make sure that we are identifying them within the language that reflects which level they fall into, because again, that is how we are best able to target our services and our activities. Those are the needs that are there. So our community doesn't, or our community lacks would be appropriate language. Individuals need, or individuals do not have, that would be another appropriate language. Our agency has need for, so that's all language that we want to make sure that we are articulating there. So we're just teaching right now this format for writing a needs statement, which is using that language. And it's one of the most important concepts related to Roma, because if we're really gonna be results oriented, we have to make sure that we have clearly identified the need that we're trying to address.
Is there still an alternative high school in Kalispell? Or is
Yes.
that- yeah, is there? Okay.
Yep, yeah, and they have some adult basic education courses that are at FBCC. It used to be in collaboration with Community Action Partnership, but once we evaluated other local community resources, it was identified that there were alternate
Already
locations
in
where
place.
people could get that need addressed. So again, it was a really intentional decision that was made based off of looking at available community resources and then making a plan that was appropriate. We don't need to invest agency resources into providing a service that is otherwise provided through another outlet. So,
Do we invest in helping people utilize that service?
yep,
Okay.
yeah, and we make sure that that's a strong relationship that's been cultivated there, and we actually are able to use those services as match dollars for other programs that we use. So it's really, again, so much of what our network does is that partnership and collaboration, and we're strengthening these other programs that are there that are really supportive, you know, for the purpose of what we have. So, let's just go through a couple other examples here. So, if an individual doesn't have a place to live, what level need is that?
Family.
Individual,
Yeah.
family.
Thank you. So, you know, I mean, we can definitely help somebody find a place to live, but what about if the community lacks available housing option?
I was gonna say, it sounds like a community issue to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lack of available housing option would be a community issue. And so then also a need statement that could potentially come from, you know, lack of housing or places for people to live is that our agency needs to work with others to create more housing opportunities, okay? So that's an example that's there. Again, we're looking here and talking about outcomes and services as a way to help participants understand the different level of needs. So we're talking here about different services that might be there, and we're focusing on family, community, agency. Do we feel good about this? Cool. Okay. So, I think this is the part where I'm going to need some help, but I'll kind of prime you guys for what it is that we're gonna do first, and then we can get set up for Alicia to help describe some of this stuff. So, what we're gonna do right now is identify some of our community needs. So I'm gonna give you guys about a minute to just jot down some ideas of needs. You have to remember, we have to identify 3 issues, concerns, barriers, challenges, situations that are facing the people within our communities, and write these down in just a couple of words, okay? You have to make sure that they are not just one word. You can't just put down housing. You have to give it a little bit more, I know. I already got it wrong. And it can't be all 3. We can't be like, oh, this need addresses all of them. So again, I'm gonna give you a minute.
So does bagel shops count?
This community left. Good bagel shop. I know, we had one for like 20 seconds and then it left. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really know much, so I just
I
shoot
guess.
jokes. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know enough about
We
that.
got
town.
nowhere.
Make sure that you're using the format that we just talked about. Our agency lacks, you know, individuals need. Pardon me?
I want you to do 6 months, so I just guess what I see.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't really know about the community yet, I still need to know it.
So maybe just put down some observations of things that you've experienced, you know, like was it easy to identify housing?
I remember. You're the one I went to.
I know, yeah, but just think about things that, you know, things that you might.
Job center, I got this job.
I know, yeah, well, so, Yeah, so just, come up with some